I'm 83 years old, and people still look at me with that soft, pitying face when I say I live alone. They lower their voice like they're asking about an illness. Laura Grace, aren't you lonely? They don't ask it like a real question. They ask it like they already decided the answer. So here's my confession. Living alone didn't break me. Losing my dignity almost did. They always warn you about the quiet. Nobody warns you about what it feels like when your own family starts treating you like you've become unsafe to be in charge of yourself. Nobody warns you about how fast they'll say facility the moment you scare them. Nobody warns you about the humiliation of being called stubborn when you're really just trying to stay human. And look, I'm not here to tell you living alone is a dreamy thing every day. I'm not going to sell you a fantasy. I've had nights where the silence felt sharp. I've had mornings where I woke up and didn't want to get out of bed because there was no one there to notice if I didn't. I've had a catastrophic fall that left me on the floor for 11 hours. I've sat in Meadowbrook Nursing Home for 30 days and realized how quickly a life can get taken from you in the name of help. But I'm still here, in my home, on my terms, and what I found inside these walls isn't tragedy, it's peace, real peace, mixed with fear I learned to manage instead of deny. There are 5 things nobody tells you about living alone as an older woman. 5. I'm going to tell you all of them, and I'm saving the heaviest one for the end, because it's the one that decides whether living alone becomes freedom or becomes a slow kind of danger. The first thing nobody tells you is that the quiet can feel like an enemy before it becomes a friend. Let me explain. The first night I spent truly alone after Vincent died, I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. Vincent had been gone only a little while, and I was still reaching for him without realizing it. I'd set 2 mugs out for tea and then freeze with my hand in the cabinet. I turned my head when I heard the house settle, expecting his footsteps. That first night, the house felt too big for one person. Every little sound mattered. A pipe clicked, a floorboard creaked, the refrigerator hummed, and my mind filled in the rest. I turned on the television for company. I didn't even watch it. I just needed voices so I wouldn't feel like I was disappearing. And what I didn't understand back then was that I wasn't afraid of burglars. I was afraid of myself. I was afraid of what would come up in the quiet when I wasn't busy being somebody's wife or somebody's mother. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that went cold, and I thought, who am I now? Who am I if I'm not taking care of someone every minute? Honestly, I didn't have an answer, and that scared me more than death ever did. The second thing nobody tells you is that living alone forces you to meet yourself, whether you like yourself or not. I need you to understand something before I continue. A lot of women in my generation were raised to be useful first and person second. I was good at being useful. I was a caretaker, a scheduler, a mediator, the one who remembered birthdays and prescriptions, and where the extra towels were kept. When everyone moved out and Vincent was gone, my usefulness didn't vanish, but the audience did. And without an audience, I felt pointless. So I started small. And look, this is going to sound almost silly, but pay attention to this detail because it's going to matter later. One evening, I decided I was going to cook a meal that Vincent didn't especially like and the kids would have complained about. I made it because I liked it. I used my good dishes, not for company, for me. I lit a candle. I sat down like I mattered, and the food tasted different. It tasted like I was allowed to exist without performing. And what I didn't understand back then was that this is what independence really is. Not doing everything alone out of pride. Independence is treating myself like I'm worth effort, even when nobody is watching. The third thing nobody tells you is that living alone can be incredibly empowering, and then, in one moment, it can become terrifying if you're not prepared. This is where the story gets heavy. I had been living alone for years when I fell. I wasn't doing anything dramatic. I wasn't climbing on a ladder. I wasn't being reckless. I was walking through my own living room, turned too quickly, and my foot caught the edge of a rug. I went down hard. I tried to push up. My shoulder screamed. I tried to roll. My hip wouldn't cooperate. I could see my phone on the end table, and I couldn't reach it. I could hear it ring at one point, someone calling. I later found out it was Sarah, but I couldn't get to it. I stayed there for 11 hours. I peed on myself. I got cold. Then I got hot. I talked to myself out loud because the silence started to feel like it was pressing on my chest. I remember staring at the underside of my coffee table and thinking, is this how it ends? Not with drama, with dust and the hum of the refrigerator. I was ashamed. I was scared. I felt like a burden before anyone even found me. When Emma finally came by and found me, she cried so hard she could barely speak. She kept saying, "Oh my God, Mom, oh my God." And I tried to comfort her from the floor, which still makes me angry when I think about it. That fall didn't just bruise my body. It gave my children a story to use against me. And that's when everything fell apart. All 5 of them circled up like a committee. David had that tight managerial tone. Linda had facts and worries. Michael looked sick. Sarah tried to sound gentle. Emma kept wiping her eyes like tears were proof. David said, "Mom, this can't happen again." I said, "I know." Linda said, "You can't live alone. It's not safe." And I started to explain. I started to justify. I started to bargain. I said things like, "I'm usually careful, and it was just an accident, and I can make changes, and I'll be fine." You know what surprised me the most? The more I explained, the less they listened. My explaining wasn't helping. It was making me sound like a child. Then David said the word that makes every older woman's stomach drop. Facility. They called it Meadowbrook. They called it just for 30 days. They called it temporary. They called it for your own good. Wait, it gets worse. They acted like I didn't get a vote, like my fear and my dignity were side issues. They were worried, yes, but they were also relieved to have an action plan that didn't require them to sit with uncertainty. I went to Meadowbrook, 30 days, and I want you to hear this from someone who was there. You can lose yourself quickly in a place like that if you don't fight to stay a person. The staff wasn't cruel every minute. Some were kind. But the system treats you like a schedule, a task, a bed. And if you're an older woman who's been trained to be good, you'll shrink to fit it. I caught myself apologizing for needing help to the bathroom. I caught myself waiting to speak until someone looked at me. I caught myself thinking, maybe this is what I deserve for getting old. That thought scared me more than my fall. The fourth thing nobody tells you is that living alone teaches you how to protect your peace, and that protection is going to offend some people. When I got out of Meadowbrook, because I did get out, and I fought for it, I came home and I changed the way I let people treat me. I stopped letting my children talk to me like I was a problem to solve. I stopped over-explaining. I stopped begging them to understand my choices. And what I didn't understand back then was that respect isn't something you request. It's something you enforce with your behavior. If David came over and started scanning my house like an inspector, I didn't rush to reassure him. I said, "Sit down and talk to me like your mother, or you can go home." If Linda started in with, "Mom, you should," I said, "I'll hear your concern and then I'll decide." If Sarah used that sweet voice that means she's trying to manage me, I paused and said, "Say what you mean." That kind of firmness makes people uncomfortable, especially grown children who are used to their mother bending. But here's the thing. My peace is more valuable than anyone's comfort with my choices. The fifth thing nobody tells you, and this is the one I saved for last, is that living alone forces you to build a relationship with yourself that no one else can build for you. Because if you don't learn to be with yourself, you'll start chasing attention in ways that humiliate you. I did that. I'm not proud, but I'm honest. After Vincent died, I called my kids too much. I didn't think I was being needy. I told myself I was checking in, but I was trying to plug a hole in my life with their voices. When they didn't answer, I felt rejected. When they did answer, I talked too long. I offered advice. I tried to be necessary. And what I didn't understand back then was that I was training them to see me as needy instead of strong. I was trading my dignity for a moment of reassurance. After the fall, I realized something brutally simple. If I wanted to stay in my home, I had to become someone I could rely on. Not in a fantasy way, in practical ways. I had to make routines. I had to make safety systems. I had to keep my phone on me. I had to eat properly. I had to move my body every day. I had to stop pretending I was invincible and start acting like I was responsible. That's not loneliness. That's adulthood. And that's when I started writing things down, just for me. Little rules and reminders so I wouldn't end up on the floor again, so I wouldn't end up back at Meadowbrook, so I wouldn't forget what fear taught me. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't know it at the time, but my granddaughter Claire found my notes months later and told me other women needed them. She's the one who helped me put it online. She called it The Ultimate Guide to Freedom. I still feel strange about it, honestly. But that's a story for the end of this video. Because the end of this story is where I tell you what's happening now. My son David called again this week. He said, "Mom, you need to take that down. You're embarrassing the family. You're airing private business." And my daughter Linda has said her own version of it too. And I sat here at this table and I considered it. I'm 83. I'm not trying to be some internet personality. I'm embarrassed to be selling something at my age. I was raised to keep family matters quiet. But I keep getting letters from women who say, "I thought living alone meant I was doomed," or "My kids are pressuring me," or "I fell and I've never told anyone how humiliating it was," or "I will do everything in my power to stay out of a nursing home." And I can't unhear them. So I'm going to say this plainly. The link to The Ultimate Guide to Freedom is in the pinned comment. I might take it down soon because I'm losing my nerve and because my son keeps pressing me. So if something I said today reached you, click it now. Don't wait. And if you felt seen here, leave a like. It tells me to keep telling the truth, even when my family would rather I didn't. I read every comment you leave, every single one. If you're living alone and people pity you, tell me what they say. If you're afraid of losing your home, tell me. I'm here. Subscribe if you want to keep talking. Every week I sit at this table and I tell you the truth, because living alone as an older woman isn't a tragedy, but living without dignity is. And I'm not doing that. Not anymore.